All right, in lesson 5.6, we're going to learn our last form of our last equation for a line. Okay, the first equation that we learned was slope-intercept, which was y equals mx plus b. Then in 5.5, we learned the point-slope form, which was y minus y1 equals m times x minus x1. And then today we're going to learn the standard form of a line. Okay, all of these equations must be memorized. The standard form of a line is ax plus by equals c. And a, b, and c all represent numbers. So it could be something like 2x plus 3y equals 5. Okay? The standard form line, this is something that is so important. The standard form of a line can have absolutely no fractions at all. And the first number, which is always going to be a, can never be a negative number. So if I had an equation like this is not in standard form because a, the number right here in front of x, because this is ax plus by equals c, okay, this number a is negative. So I could not have this. This is not in standard form. So all I would have to do there is say, okay, what do I need to multiply by negative 2 to make it a positive? Negative 1. However, whatever you do to one thing, remember you got to do to everything in an equation. So I would change my answer to 2x minus 1y equals negative 6. And we'll go over all this in just a second. But you may say, okay, well, now I have negative numbers everywhere. Doesn't matter. As long as a is not negative, then that's perfectly acceptable. Okay, so I can't have any fractions, and the first number cannot be negative. All right, so let's go over some of these equations, and they want us to write it in standard form. Again, you have to memorize standard form, which is ax plus by equals c. Again, a, b, and c are all numbers. A cannot be negative, and there can be no fractions at all. That means b can't be a fraction, or c cannot be a fraction. So let's look at this problem here. What is the number in front of x? Let's just go ahead and write it. 1. So I have negative 1x plus 3y minus 4 equals 0. Ax and by have to be by themselves on one side of the equation. So what is over here with ax and by that needs to move? The negative 4. So how do I move it from this side of the equation to the other? Inverse operation. So I add 4 to both sides, and I get negative 1x plus 3y is equal to 4. Now, I check, do I have any fractions? No. Is a negative? Yes. So how do I change that? Remember, anytime it's a negative, all you've got to do is multiply by negative 1. Whatever you do to one thing in the equation, you have to do to everything else. So if I multiply the first term by negative 1, I've got to multiply every other term by negative 1. So negative 1 times negative 1 is positive 1x minus 3y equals negative 4. So now my equation is in standard form. A is positive and there are no fractions. Okay, let's look at this next equation. First of all, I see a fraction. I know that's going to be a problem. So let's go ahead and fix that. Does anybody know how to fix a fraction to make it a positive number? Okay, what you want to do is you always want to just find what the denominator is on your fraction, which is 5, and multiply by that same number. So let's multiply by 5. Remember, same exact thing. Whatever I do to one thing in the equation, I've got to do to everything. So if I multiply this term by 5, every term has to be multiplied by 5. So 5 times y is 5y. Negative 2/5 times 5. What happens? The whole reason why you do that are that those numbers cancel out. So I'm left with negative 2x minus 15. Okay, now let's just put this in standard form. So I just need to move my x over so it's on the same side as y. How would I move this negative 2x over to here? I just do the inverse, which is addition. And now I have 2x plus 5y is equal to negative 15. Do I have any fractions at all? No. Is a negative? No. So I know I have an equation in standard form. Okay, let's look at this next one. I see a fraction. I know I've got to change it. What can I multiply this fraction by to make it a whole number? Let's find our denominator, which is 2. So I know if I just multiply this fraction by 2, what's going to happen? Are those going to cancel out? Whatever I do to one thing in my equation, I've got to do to everything. So I have negative 10x plus 22 is equal to 1y. All right, remember, you need to put the x and the y on one side, and I need to have the c on the other side. We say, okay, y is by itself over here, c is over here. Why don't we just move x over here to the same side as y? Because what's going to happen? I add 10x to both sides, and what happens to that negative 10? It becomes a positive. Well, that fixes one of my problems. So I have 22 equals 10x plus 1y. You say, but that's totally backwards. Okay, let's rewrite it. 10x plus 1y is equal to 22. That's a perfectly acceptable thing to do. Just totally flip-flop it. It would just be like saying x is equal to 3 or 3 is equal to x. Same exact thing. So that's all that we did there is we just flipped it. Now I know I have no fractions and a is positive. Okay, so in example 2, what they want us to do is also they want us to write this equation in standard form, which is ax plus by equals c. Let's write that. But what they've given us is a point and a slope. Okay? They're saying, okay, hold on a second. There's no m in this problem. There's no b. How am I going to work this? Okay, this is very simple. This is all we got to do. A point and a slope, the easiest way to do this is put it in point-slope form. So I'm going to say y minus 3 is equal to negative 2 times x plus 4. I made that double negative a positive. So once I put the equation in point-slope form, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to solve the equation out, because if you notice, I'm going to have every piece I need for my standard equation, which is ax plus by equals c. So I do the distributive property here, and I have y minus 3 is equal to negative 2x plus 4. Then all I want to do is combine like terms. So I add 3, and now I have y is equal to negative 2x plus 7. Then I need to add 2x because I need it to be on the same side as my y. And I get 2x plus y, or I could write 1y, is equal to 7. And that is now in standard form because I have no negative numbers as a, and I don't have any fractions. Okay, so when they give you a point and a slope, remember, okay, let's put this in point-slope form, then solve to make it in standard form. All right, let's try one more of those. So I have my point and my slope, so I'm going to write y minus y1, which is 1, equals m, which is 3/4, times x minus x1, which x1 is negative 5, so I'm going to make this a positive 5. Then I do distributive property. Y minus 1 is equal to 3/4 x plus, this is going to be 5 over 1, so 15 over 4. Then I add 1 to both sides, and really I'm going to add 4 over 4 because 1 as a fraction, if I wanted to write it, is 4 over 4. Okay, that gives me a common denominator there. And I get y is equal to 3/4 x plus 19 over 4. Then I just subtract 3/4 x to move it over here. And I'm going to erase some of this, what we did earlier here. And I'm going to have negative 3/4 x plus y is equal to 19 over 4. Now I've got a couple different problems here. I've got a negative and I've got a fraction. So what I need to do is I know, okay, I've got to multiply by 4. Whatever I do to one thing, I've got to do to everything. But also I notice I can go ahead and take care of my negative if I multiply by negative 4, because 2 negatives equal a positive. Again, I've got to multiply everything by negative 4. So this cancels out the negative sign, and I get 3x minus 4y is equal to The 4's cancel out, negative 19. And that would be how I write that equation in standard form. So no negatives and no fractions.